Max Nation and Dog Pound. I'm Unger to the Max, and it is Cleveland Browns motherfucking game day. Yes, it is preseason, but guess what? I don't give a shit. Today, the Cleveland Browns are welcoming the Minnesota Vikings into the Dog Pound. And as it is the Minnesota Vikings, who are today's opponent, I want to give a huge shout out to my man, Minnesota Vikings Man 28. Now, if you remember, when Minnesota Vikings Man 28 and I did a video collaboration back in 2021, I got the win because my Browns went into US Bank Stadium and beat the Vikings by a score of 14-7. So, I know that he's going to be looking for a little bit of revenge against me, maybe today, but for sure next season, because the Browns will be taking on the NFC North, which means we'll be hosting the Vikings, we'll be hosting the Packers, we'll be at the Lions, and we'll be at the Bears. But focusing on today's game, yes, it is the Vikings coming to town. And, well, things haven't been great for the Minnesota Vikings this offseason. They drafted J.J. McCarthy 10th overall out of the University of Michigan. And guess what? He's not going to play at all this season because he had to undergo meniscus surgery, which means the Vikings are going to have to roll with Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback. Yeah, not great. But you want to talk about not great? Deshaun Watson hasn't been able to stay on the field at all these past couple seasons, whether it's been because of suspension or injuries. And everybody talks about, can Deshaun Watson find the Houston version of himself? And when I ask people, show me evidence that he can get back to that form, they always point to the second half of last season's game against the Baltimore Ravens. And I say, okay, what other evidence do you have? And maybe they point out the Arizona game. Maybe they point out the Tennessee game. And I'm like, that's it? You can only give me 3 examples in 2 seasons? That's not great. So, do I think Deshaun Watson can get back to his Houston form? No, I don't. And honestly, Houston won that trade with us in a landslide. Look at where the Texans are and look at where we are. I haven't heard anyone saying the Browns are going to pick I haven't heard anyone's pick the Cleveland Browns to win the AFC North. I haven't heard anyone say, yeah, the Cleveland Browns are true playoff contenders this season. I haven't heard anyone saying that. Have you? But then again, I haven't heard anybody say anything about the Minnesota Vikings being playoff contenders. Look at the Vikings division, for crying out loud. They're in the division with the Detroit Lions, the reigning defending NFC North champions, and really, they should have been in the Super Bowl if Dan Campbell hadn't screwed up in the NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers. You've got the Green Bay Packers, who really should have beat the 49ers in the NFC divisional round last season. And you have the Chicago Bears, who should be an improved team, but I don't think the Bears are going to be a playoff contender this season. Nonetheless, though, it is preseason action. Browns are taking on the Minnesota Vikings today. Shout out to my man, Minnesota Vikings Man 28. But let's go, Browns. Let's get in the win column in this preseason.